Okay, so this brings us to our action-packed lightning round of presentations from companies that are interested in being a part of the ColoradoJam Technology Sandbox and Incubator. So we're not going to spend a lot of time sort of doing introductions. So basically what we've got here is a bunch of judges from the state. So Jonathan, if you could change my name from Adam Dill, that'd be great. Just put my name up there. And then secondly, if we can bring the judges in, whoever's on, so we can get rolling. We don't have a lot of time. See, look how good that is. Okay, so judges only at this point. So let's see, put Daniel and Jason back in the backstage. We'll come back to them in just a minute.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, John?
Yeah, put Jason and Daniel backstage again, please. Great. Tone, good to see you. Will, good to see you. Carrie, good to see you. All right, cool. So I think Russell and Lou and maybe the governor, who knows, is going to show up. But we've got our first presentation here. So to introduce our judges, we have people from the state of Colorado who are going to be evaluating the quality and precision of these presentations. These are lightning pitches. So these are 5-minute pitches, 1-minute questions. So they're going to go really fast, take notes, do it as well as you can. And we've got literally 10 of them to get through in 1 hour. Lightning pitches. This is like speed round. So you guys ready?
We're ready.
Okay, let's bring on Kevin Owaki from Gitcoin. He is going to be dealing with the challenge number 11. His introduction is quadratic funding is the optimal way to fund public goods in a democratic way. We can use it to fund the infrastructure builds in public goods in Colorado. It's also something that we're looking at to fund the Technology Sandbox and Incubator. Kevin, take it away.
Thanks so much, John. Hi, Tong. Hi, Carrie. Hi, Will. What's going on? So what I'm going to show you today is called quadratic funding, and it is the mathematically optimal way to fund public goods. Can everyone see my screen? Just give me a thumbs up if so. So we created this website called WTF is QF in order to explain what quadratic funding is. Quadratic funding is based off of a paper by Vitalik Buterin, Zoe Hitzig, and Glenn Weil. The paper is 31 pages long. I'm going to explain to you in hopefully 30 seconds what quadratic funding is and why it's the mathematically optimal way to fund public goods, things like clean air, clean water, sustainable downtowns, and stuff like that. So basically, quadratic funding is a way of distributing a central pool of matching funds alongside a crowdfunding campaign. So we're funding public goods as the government, but also with community from a bottoms-up perspective. So basically, the way it works is that you've got a central matching pool, and you've got some projects that are raising money in a quadratic funding scheme. And the cool thing about quadratic funding is that you distribute the matching funds according to which crowdfunding contributions have come in. And the neat thing about quadratic funding is, due to the math, a project with a broader base of support, say that gets $10 from 10 contributors, will get more of a matching amount than a project that gets $10 from 1 contributor, because we're optimizing for public goods that have a broad base of democratic support. We're optimizing for the preferences of the rich the poor and the many over the rich and the few. And so what's really neat about this is that public goods have this public goods have this thing called the free rider problem, which is basically, I'm already consuming clean air. Why should I pay more in order to support clean air? I already have a livable downtown. Why would I bother in order to contribute to this? And what's really cool about quadratic funding is that the projects that have the most broad base of support are the ones that are going to get the highest match from the matching pool. And so an individual donation of $10 can be matched with $243, or an individual donation of $100 can be matched with hundreds of dollars. And so it creates this really amazing incentive to get people to contribute to public goods in a way that optimizes for the preferences of everyday people, not just those who are connected well to power. And so I am the founder of Gitcoin, whose mission is to fund open source software. Open source software comprises our digital infrastructure. We want to create incentives for people to support open source software. And we have been implementing quadratic funding on Gitcoin, which has delivered $11 million in the last 2 years to public goods. And so I'm going to show you right here, Grants Round 8, which is a campaign that we ran with quadratic funding, which got 25,000 contributions to open source software worth $1 million. And this is the preference map that came out of Gitcoin Grants Round 8. So you can see in here, every node is a person or a project that was funded, and every edge between that node is a funding of that transaction. So you can see there's a deep mesh of preferences that are being expressed for public goods in the open source community on Gitcoin Grants. And so Gitcoin Grants is funding the Ethereum ecosystem. It's working in the Ethereum ecosystem, but what's it got to do with the state of Colorado and our public infrastructure? Well, let me introduce you to downtownstimulus.com, which is a pilot of quadratic funding that we ran in downtown Boulder, Colorado in July of 2020 with $25,000 supporting 5 businesses in downtown Boulder. July 2020, I know you're asking yourself, like, why July 2020? Well, the downtown retail businesses have been hit really hard by coronavirus, and we wanted to find a way to help these businesses make rent, and that's what Downtown Stimulus did. Downtown Stimulus distributed about $35,000 to the businesses in need. And what's really cool about that is that the preferences of everyday Boulder citizens were expressed in how that money was contributed, and the donor funds were matched by a crowd fund. So basically, the central matching pool kind of doubled its money as that campaign happened. So I am pitching the idea of doing more downtown stimuluses. We could bring this quadratic funding primitive that helps support public goods in open source software to Colorado to support our downtown businesses. It can be applied in many, many contexts, but the concept is battle tested, and I think it would be a great way of supporting the infrastructure here in Colorado. Thank you very much for listening to my pitch. I don't know if I have time for questions, John. I was trying to be under 5 minutes there for you. Are you playing me off? Is that what you're doing?
No, you're good. Let's see if we have any quick questions from Tom, Carrie, or Will. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So are you saying that the matching funds from the crowd fund would be matched by government funds?
Yeah, a central matching pool. In the original downtown stimulus, we had philanthropists that were funding the matching pool, but you could easily use matching pool raised from a state government. And basically the pitch would be to the state government, your money is going to go further because it's going to be going to the projects that the people care the most about. And also the people are going to co-fund these projects along with you. But yes, the short answer is yes.
And in some ways, Tom, just to be clear too, ETHDenver as the community cooperative would be also participating as matching funds to people who want to contribute outside.
So from the government side, you would be, people would be paying taxes, and we'd take their tax dollars and put them in based on how people are essentially voting with their donations. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, thanks.
All right, well, we got him boogie on to the next one. So Kevin, thank you, sir.
I think Will had a question. I don't mean to take up more of the stage. But
do you want to jam in real quick? We'll make a little bit of time.
In your experience so far, how large has the match been? So if you were to look at the crowdfunding versus the central funding, what's the ratio?
Yeah, so we have raised $4.5 million in quadratic funding across 8 rounds, and 60% of that has been from the matching fund and 40% has been from the crowd. Not that I would represent that what works with like open source blockchain hipsters is going to work in downtown Colorado, but you know, that's the trend we've seen so far.
Thank you.
Thanks, John, for having me. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, good presentation. Thank you.
See you, Kevin. Okay, we're going to move on to Daniel Valentino from GamerJibe. And if y'all don't know what GamerJibe is, it's actually happening right now where we have our ETHDenver virtual castle event. But their platform has also been repurposed to help in the education space. So they are tackling challenge number 2 and number 11, which are really around re-entering the workforce. So as a lead-in, a key challenge facing individuals entering or re-entering the workforce is the task of starting and completing their job search. We propose an engaging immersive virtual office that uses gamification to step the job applicant through their search from start to completion. So are you ready to go?
Yeah. Can you guys see my screen? Perfect. Good. I hope everyone can hear me fine. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we've repurposed gamification in this immersive 3D environment to help create virtual offices that are more engaging, and talk to you about how an application of that towards re-entering the workforce. So, oops. So the challenge is we need more effective ways to help workers enter and re-enter the workforce. And there's really three challenges around there. There's at least three distinct types of workers that are facing challenges. One is the first-time job seekers, so the typical Gen Z and millennials typically, maybe finishing high school and looking for vocational work, or finishing college and looking for a professional career. Another challenge is with laid-off workers. These are tenured workers who often face significant challenges as they seek new employment in a changed economy. This is particularly difficult right now because of the pandemic-related structural changes with permanent layoffs. And then third, it's been well talked about the challenges that women face as they re-enter the workforce after a gap of employment. So what we've done is we've created an environment that better engages people and can provide them with the resources that they need in order to address these kinds of challenges. Just a real quick background, or a little bit of background. The job market is not going to return to in-office work anytime soon. So the more that we can do to put tools in place that help people work remotely, and that implies finding jobs remotely, the easier it will be on both workers, unemployed and employed. So our solution is to use gamification in this immersive virtual environment. We found it to engage people at all three categories that I had described to you previously. At the same time as being engaging and more fun for them to learn about job resources and apply for jobs, we can also use gamification to incentivize them, all while providing them access to information that today is pretty difficult to pull together. So the first component of this is a 3D immersive environment that provides easier access to resources. That makes the job search process a lot less daunting for people who are trying to re-enter the workforce or enter it for the first time. The second thing we can do is use gamification to incentivize workers, so we can give rewards that will give workers recognition for completing training or for completing interviews, and we can build that into the job search process. And then the third thing we can do, and this ties into the blockchain, is where we can use blockchain to maintain certificates that workers or people seeking work have completed required training, that they're following the required job process. We can even start to track their performance on interviews. So we all use LinkedIn and often when searching for people to fill a position, this will help record some of the people that have been found into a blockchain that can then be used by people who are seeking employees. Part of our solution is we tie up immersion and gamification with the video and text resources that people need to find jobs, with the video conferencing that people can use to actually interview and apply for jobs. So I'm going to jump out real quick and show you the environment. Hopefully you guys can still see the screen. So this is our immersive environment. We can create booths. So Insperity is a big HR company. ColoradoJam is basically you guys. We can look through these. We can look through slides. We can look at web resources in the slides, and we can set up a booth for each aspect of the job search process. So if it's from the onboarding through to completing training certifications through to completing interviews, we can set up different booths in this immersive environment to track that. And I'm just showing here some examples of some HR companies that we've worked with. And And then the other thing is we track everything, every process. So we get analytics on everything that you do in this environment. So as you complete the forms, as you complete the certifications and you fill out the various forms that are required, we can keep track of that. So we can give you analytics on where you are in the search process, as well as help the government agencies understand where people are really having trouble in training and in progressing through their job search. Okay, so I will end there and take any questions.
Thanks, Daniel. Who's got a question?
Great solution. Just a quick question. What do you offer for folks that have been out of work for a while in terms of technical assistance so they don't end up just getting stuck in a corner somewhere?
In fact, that's exactly what this offers. So first of all, let me clarify. We're not actually building any of these resources. We're pulling these resources together into an immersive environment that makes it really easy for a job seeker to find the right resources and to track that they're going through the progression of resources correctly.
Cool. Thank you, Daniel.
All right. Thank you, guys.
So, Daniel, can I?
Go ahead, Tom.
Hi. So my understanding is that for unemployment, we have so many people who are unemployed now, and for unemployment, you have to certify every week or that you've done at least 2 interviews or email, something like that. Is that sort of a function that could be added onto this so that, there's some streamlining with the unemployment office?
Absolutely. One of the most daunting things is knowing how, once you get laid off and then you have to go apply for unemployment, just signing up for it and then understanding where you are in that process is often daunting. So we can build a booth specifically for filling out your certification every week or every 2 weeks, and we can help you keep track of the companies that you're interviewing with. So all of that can be done in one of these booths. But by putting it into this environment, it makes it frankly, it just makes it
a lot more fun. Yeah.
Exactly. I hate to say it's fun with unemployment, but
I mean, it's an unfun thing, but that you can make more less intimidating and less frustrating.
Exactly.
But on the flip side, since it's recorded on the blockchain, then it's immutable, and then the government side could use that as a recording mechanism that they have put in their certification, and they should get their payment, right? Is that right?
Exactly. It's proof of that. So right. Exactly. But I think it could go much farther than that. I think as you start to interview, you may do very well in a particular interview, and the interviewer may note that. We can actually keep track of that kind of feedback for a different interviewer who's looking for someone who's strong in that particular capability, feature set or capability.
That's interesting. I mean, there are privacy issues, but it's interesting. That's definitely interesting too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Okay, we're going to jump into the next one. We have Ashish with Whrrl. And as an introduction for him, do we have Ashish?
Hey, hi. I'm Ashish Anand, co-founder of Whrrl.
Hang on just one second. I'm going to do an introduction for you, okay? So basically, he is attacking Challenge 13, and India's largest blockchain network. Whrrl addresses the distressed sale problem of farmers, creating a trustless, low-risk digital ecosystem of web, sheet finance, commodity finance, thereby increasing farmers' income and reducing banking fraud. So it's essentially like a blockchain-based cooperative for farmers. So Ashish, take it away.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashish Anand from Whrrl. Unfortunately, I'm unable to share my take over here. My screen is not getting shared. So then I will talk about, unfortunately, that's the only option I have today, that talk about what we are doing at Whrrl. So we are the largest blockchain network of India. We have tokenized more than $500 million of agri-commodities on our platform till date, since last 1 year of operations. The first application of blockchain in agriculture financing, and also Asia's first and only blockchain platform for any sort of asset-backed lending. Today, we are trying to address the challenge number 13, that is using DAO for sustainable agriculture using Colorado LCA structure. Whrrl's logo itself talks about sustaining life blocks, and we focus on, out of the 3 types of sustainability, in agriculture, that is environmental, social, and financial, we focus on the financial sustainability of the farmers. So agriculture is, as everybody would recognize, agriculture is a unique industry in the sense that the supply happens once in a year and the demand is throughout the year. As a result, at the time of harvest, there is just supply side pressure and the prices typically dip. They may dip by 10 to 30% at the time of harvest. And the farmers now are in a dilemma. Should they wait for the prices to recover back to the average level, or should they sell? If they sell, the problem is that their realization income is what we call distress sell, is much lower. And if they don't sell, then the problem is that they have liquidity crunch. They don't have liquidity for their next crop's working capital. So Whrrl tries to address this problem by bringing up financial innovative solution called warehouse receipt finance. So in warehouse receipt finance, the farmers deposit these commodities in a particular warehouse instead of selling at low prices, and the lenders lend against these assets which are stored in the custody of a warehouse affiliated with the lenders. And that is where we are working with 1,400 warehouses. We have 3 lenders and 2 other BFSI segments, and the government of several state governments of India working with us. We propose the same solution for farmers in Colorado in a DAO structure through a LCA, wherein the patron farmers of the state join a cooperative, create a cooperative as patron members, and the lenders who will be DeFi lenders, the P2P lenders, they bring the pool of money, and together a DAO is formed in the form of a LCA. So the DeFi lenders will be getting interest against the investments they are making against this crop which is stored in a warehouse. At the same time, the farmers have the option to sell it at a later stage. And being a DAO, all the voting parameters will be coded, hard-coded in smart contract. The asset will be logged on a smart contract. And at the time of the lending, a farmer member will ask for loan. The voting will take place for the rate of interest as well as eligibility. And once the voters decided that the lending will be possible, they lend the money. The investors, patrons of LCA, investors in the LCA lend the money. The assets are logged in the smart contract. They cannot be sold. They cannot be further lent. And once the repayment comes from the farmers or from the new buyers, at that point of time, the investors receive the money as well as whatever is the excess profit, which is derived by the pool of the farmers because of a better price realization, is distributed at the end of the year among the farmers. So this is the proposal which we are doing, and this is what we are looking to address the challenge number 30.
Very cool. Thank you, Ashish. Do you all have questions for him?
I'd like to make sure I understand the basic economics here. So essentially, you're allowing farmers to get the value of selling at a different time of year when their crops are more valuable than at the point of harvest?
Right. And during that period, liquidity is provided by the P2P lenders.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Ashish. Anybody else have questions? We good? Okay. All right. We're going to move on we're going to catch up on a little time here. So So we're going to catch up on a little bit of time here with the next presenter from Serto ID, Johnny Howell.
Hey, John. Hey, everybody. Good to see you all.
Johnny lives in Denver. So like this is, we got Colorado projects, we got international projects. So as the introduction, I'm going to give it to you really quick. Serto Mobile puts students in control of their academic credentials. This is around challenge number 16, which was to build a student-centered transcript. This app enables students to manage their identity, academic transcripts, and professional training credentials from multiple institutions and sharing selectively with employers, universities, or others. Johnny, take it.
Great. We got my screen?
Yep, we got you.
Cool. So, yep, as John said, I'll run through a lot of these intro slides since we kind of just got the rundown. So we're addressing Challenge 16, reimagining the student transcript experience using Web3 technology. Our tech is built on something called cryptographically, or DIDs, or decentralized identifiers, which cryptographically tie those identities with the data that is relevant to them. And that data is in the form of a W3C standard called a verifiable credential, or a VC. You might hear me refer to. I'll refer to it as that. We have a great team. Alana, our CEO, is speaking on Thursday, so be on the lookout for that. So as John talked about, getting school transcripts is a time-consuming and complex process. It involves a lot of paper. It involves lots of institutions and different places, especially during transfers between schools. And it starts pretty early on, even in high school. And getting transcripts for college classes taken in high school or other forms of education. So the way we're going to solve this is with something called Serto Mobile, which you might be familiar with our old company, Uport. We used to go by that name. We had a mobile app under that name too. That was a credential wallet, but this is a sneak peek at the revamped UX that we're hoping to deploy soon. So Serto is an app that allows any user to, in this case, import credentials from other places or get them natively inside of this app. So in this case, we'll look at a user named Sophia, importing her credentials from something like, let's say, the My Colorado app, where she might have a proof of identity. If this credential is in the form of a verifiable credential, which we could talk about with the state, she would be able to export that into a more general purpose mobile wallet. So here she's able to accept this credential signed by the decentralized identifier of the state of Colorado. And this is what a verifiable credential looks like. We get that in the app. Now she can leverage that proof of identity online to do a number of things that would normally take a very cumbersome manual experience to accomplish. So here she's going to get her transcript from the University of Colorado. She goes to their website. She scans the QR code with the app. She is then asked to disclose that proof of identity by using her mobile app. This is the consent layer that is very, very important to how all of these use cases should work. So here's the University of Colorado requesting to view that driver's license. She can even control on the view access and how long her consent should last. So she allows that. We are able to authorize via the biometric on the device or passcode if that's what needs to happen. Now she's able to accept the credential from the University of Colorado. They received her decentralized identifier in that previous step, so they know where to send it. She adds that to her wallet. She can see her activity on screen at any time of all the types of interactions she's performed with regards to her data and her identity with any of these institutions. And now she has two credentials, and she can leverage these. So she's going to go apply for an internship, maybe using something like Opolis with the state of Colorado. She applies for a job here. She's going to be a citizen data intern doing some data analytics or science stuff. And she's going to get another credential request, same pattern, opens up the Serto app. So Opolis is requesting to view these two credentials. She allows those. Again, authorizes via the biometric. And now she has shared these two credentials. Some time goes by, let's say. So we're here at the lock screen. She's going to get a push notification that the Colorado Office of Economic Development has issued her a credential. She opens the app, and now she's able to see she has received this internship credential, and she can then leverage this credential for access to anything she needs to do in any of the systems or sites for the state of Colorado to perform her job. So it doubles as an access control credential here as well. She's able to see all of her credentials, and then very importantly, as I heard talked about in some of the earlier talks, she is able to revoke her consent. So we can use the same model of verifiable credentials and selective disclosure to keep track of where she has shared pieces of her information. So her transcript in this instance, let's say she's going to revoke access to Opolis, and she already has her job. She doesn't need a job site right now. And she can hit revoke, and this essentially issues a credential to Opolis stating her revocation of her consent that would be legally binding and give her that assurance that her privacy is being protected at least more than it would be otherwise. And so in conclusion here, Serto Mobile puts, students in control of their academic credentials, but also any other credentials that adopt these standards. Manage the identity. Very importantly, we keep all the data private and off-chain, so these credentials are not living on a blockchain for a lot of good reasons. She can collect all these transcripts. She can share selectively and maintain those and manage those relationships in a more granular fashion. And all of these credentials can be independently verified by any other institution that she shares with, creating the fluidity that we want to see in across these systems and breaking down those silos. And it's built on the W3C decentralized identity standards, which we work on at Serto a lot. And this isn't our first time doing this type of use case. Back a couple years ago, one of the things we did was we allowed the Zug government to issue, that's in Switzerland, we allowed them to issue credentials to the Uport mobile app back then, and then the Swiss Federal Railway was able to then leverage the credentials on these employees' phones, and they could authenticate into work sites using that credential. So with that, I'll leave it up to y'all to ask any questions, or I can clarify anything that was that I said that needs some
questions.
Yeah.
What do we got for Johnny?
Quick question. I think this is a really great and compelling way to use the technology. For the Switzerland example, did they own the phones? Was that government property, or was that their own personal cell phone?
Own personal cell phone.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Are the institutions charging for access to these transcripts, or there financial transactions that are having to take place throughout this?
That's a good question. I don't know if all institutions charge for transcripts, as I'm under the impression that a lot of that charge is due to the fact that there are costs involved in mailing transcripts and moving those around physically. So hopefully whatever costs that might be present in these interactions now could maybe go away, because this effectively costs only the electricity cost to move this data around the internet.
Thanks.
So, I have a question. So I understand MIT has already been using this for a while. Could this be modified for, say, elementary school, so that if kids are going from one school to another, they can just take their transcripts with them and not really add an additional administrative burden to the public schools?
Yeah, I think that's a great use case, and it also highlights another great use case for this type of technology, which is the ability to use DIDs and link identities together for custodian purposes. So having the parents be able to manage the credentials of the child in this case is something that this technology totally enables, and so we get around that problem too. Yeah.
And then being able to switch over when they're 18.
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Johnny. We're out of time. Thanks, brother.
See y'all. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Okay, moving on. We're going to go to Trubit and Jason. We got Jason. There he is, wearing his Buffercorn t-shirt and everything. So Trubit is attacking Challenge 5, which has to do with data and global warming. So Trubit is a blockchain enhancement which enables parties to agree on complex computations. One can use it to improve climate data processing and minimize statistical model bias. So Jason, you ready?
Yeah, if we could get my screen share up there, that would be good.
There you go.
All right, off we go. So I'm Jason, the founder of Trubit. Trubit is probably best known as a scaling solution for Ethereum, but I'm going to put a little, perhaps a new spin on it for this talk. So as just to recap John's summary, so Trubit is a blockchain enhancement which enables parties to agree on complex computations. So it can sit on top of any existing ledger. There, basically, you want to run it on smart contracts. But that's all I'm going to say about blockchain for the rest of this talk. You can just think of Trubit as a black box, as I've sort of drawn it here. So you'll have Trubit takes in a function f, and an input data X, and it just outputs f of X. And it does this in a way which is communally verified, so you can have a very strong assurance that that computation is done correct. In fact, you can participate in its correctness. So, so let me flip to the topic at hand here, which is climate change. And as I said, the stakes are very high. And because the stakes are high, there's potential for conflicts of interest, which is also the same as sources for error when you're talking about modeling. So, you know, obviously one of the objectives that was stated in this particular challenge was to protect community resources. So you have the concerns of the community, you have companies that are impacted by policy decisions. Of course, companies are maximizing revenue. You have academics at the universities that are striving to get tenure and may want to demonstrate that they have something, you know, really innovative. So there is sometimes a chance there that, you know, there could be, they may want to show some data and hide ones that don't support their thesis. And that is similar for the politicians who have a very clear objective, in many cases, to just simply get reelected. So we're talking about here economic incentives that are introducing bias. We've got scientific bias and political bias. So I mean, even scientific can be biases, I guess, in the case of climate change. So in order to clean up this mess, we really need is a fresh narrative. So this is what I'm going to call collaborative data provenance. And it's pretty simple. So we're just taking the same picture we had before. So I'm using the letters F and G for functions. So you have one instance of a Trubit. So these are now just Trubit tasks, where you're taking in the first one up here is taking in a function F and an input X, giving you out F of X. One down here is giving you G of Y, taking in a function G and an input Y, giving you G of Y. So these are all things that would be brought in from somewhere in the world of data around climates, which is but we can standardize the way that they're sort of brought into this formal system. And once you have done that first layer of sort of bringing the data in, we can now apply another function, which here I'm calling it H, take the inputs of what we had upstream and get something which is very assured downstream. And mind you that these can all come from different places. So it could come from different districts in Colorado. It could be that we're combining from different states or different countries. So it's very important that we have a way to get consensus over the way that the data is collected, the way that it's processed. And you know, obviously, since it's all transparent on the blockchain, anybody is free to use the streams or not use the streams that they feel are relevant to them. So just to put this all together, what we're really doing with Trubit is eliminating the hidden bias that creeps up in all of these models. And I'm sure those of you who have lived through the pandemic of COVID-19 or are still inside of it have seen these kind of models creep up where we get policy decisions that are made where the model is made to suit the policy rather than the other way around. And there are different reasons why that happens. But so we're talking about standardized data cleaning. We're talking about publicly verified statistics. And of course, this comes from sovereign jurisdictions. As I said in the very beginning, Trubit is a blockchain enhancement. It can sit on top of any blockchain. So communities can set up their roles however they want. And we can bring those into the pipeline across these different jurisdictions. So objective, accurate, collaborative modeling, that's what we get. So, and ultimately the outcome is better policy decisions. So that's really what we're talking about, more accurate models that have either less bias or make transparency in the way that they're biased. And I'm not going to go through this diagram, but
yeah, we don't have time.
It is a system that I've been working on for since 2015. It is fully functional. We have a very user-friendly client. We built our own architecture, and it's good to go. So black box all you want. You don't, again, the last time I'll say the word blockchain, but here it is. So thank you very much, and look forward to creating some new climate applications together.
Cool. Do we have any questions from our judges?
Can you talk a little bit more about the dispute resolution process?
Yep. So in this, I don't know if that's in my slides or you were just, that seems like a general Trubit question. So in Trubit, you have an instance where you would have, if someone says I did this computation, solver says I did a computation, verifier says I don't agree with your output. Basically, what they do is take them to court. So in this case, the court is filled with the judges are the Ethereum miners, who we assume always compute correctly, but only can compute a very little amount. So what the judge will do is force the solver and verifier to play what we call a verification game, which basically amounts to a binary search to find the first step of that computation where they disagree. So they split it in half, and if we're good there, then we go closer to the end. Otherwise, anyway, you get it down to a single step, and that is our architecture allows us to run a single step on chain. So we were one of the very first projects to experiment with WebAssembly architecture, and in fact, even WebAssembly was complex. We break down each WebAssembly opcode into 12 sub-steps. But so anyway, that's basically it. We can get anybody can jump in and dispute a computation, but on top of that, we also have an economic layer that incentivizes them to actually do that, so that it's not just a theoretical thing. This really is a black box.
Cool. All right, we're out of time. Thank you, Jason. Okay, next one is Zachary from Operation Greenlight. We're attacking challenge 14. Thanks, Zach. Good to see you. I'm just going to give you a quick introduction. So, AI recommendation system that incentivizes participants to cooperate in positive-sum games to reduce traffic and pollution, decrease accidents, and make travel in Colorado more efficient. Rewards can be supplied in part by community businesses as a bridge to challenge 12. Zach, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do it.
You guys see my slides there?
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, I appreciate this opportunity. Nice to be here talking about this. This is kind of like an idea that I've been scheming on for quite a while. So it's exciting to get to, pitch it to folks that are interested. At its core, really this, I saw the challenges and, instantaneously kind of connected with this idea of incentives for commuters. The base of the idea is really focused around how can we incentivize cooperation and, improve traffic flow conditions. So this number 14 challenge, and I'm also very drawn to lotteries and games of chance. So what I realized that there's a nice bridge to kind of tackle both of these with this concept that I've been working on for a while. So the problems are pretty obvious here. There's a great TED Radio Hour on happiness where they do an experiment. They text folks randomly throughout the day. And at one point, you get a text and you reply how you're feeling at that point in time. And the most common scenario, the most negative time for people is when they're stuck in traffic, right? So not unobvious there, but people don't like traffic. So accidents are bad, pollution, right? The problems here are really pretty obvious. There's not a lot to it. So the lay of the land here for Greenlight, I was on a trip down to Buena Vista and from Boulder, kind of going through Evergreen, and just noticing the traffic patterns and how cars were not working together. And I thought, it really occurred to me that with a little bit of cooperation, we could dramatically improve the flow of traffic. And obviously this idea is not new. You have apps like Waze and things that have tried to do something like this. This is a bit of a different approach to it. So one of the ideas that I took from, that Buena Vista experience and a lot of trips up I-70 to Fort Collins, drivers, are participating in a zero-sum game, essentially. So how can we flip that script? Another important component or observation with this is that, we don't have as much information as we could. There's a lot of really relevant information that drivers simply don't have access to make decisions about when to go places, how to go places, these kinds of things. So what we'll do is we'll change the rules of the game up a little bit here. So we're going to look at this concept as more of a public service and, you know, a nonprofit, something of that nature. And that's sort of like the base idea there is to move the motives away from making profit, right? So the system should function, and, you know, if we're doing well, then traffic patterns are reduced, right? It's not about the profit. The next thing, voluntary participation only. It would be so much easier if we could say, hey, everyone use a system like this, but obviously that's not going to happen. So we have to incentivize people to play, and we have to understand that at the lower levels, when a system like this first starts, it's, you know, going to be relatively ineffective. The more people that join, the better it would get. Another rule that's important here, we're going to assume that players are going to be anonymous. We do not want, you know, there's people going places, where they are, their GPS data, those types of things opens up a lot of different privacy concerns. So the game is going to be built around the concept of everyone being anonymous. So from there, what we do is we kind of compile this idea of a big brain. And essentially, this is a AI style recommendation system, right? A recommendation engine. So this brain is collecting all types of data. We have weather, traffic data, road conditions, what's the temperature of the road, wind speeds, what events are going on in town, anything at all that could be relevant for this brain, this recommendation engine to help us figure out and recommend when and where to go places. So from there, basically what we do, you could think about players inside the game come in and they say, hey, you know, we'll use zero knowledge proofs. So what we could do is say, hey, I'm a legit player in the game, but I'm not going to tell you who I am. So there's our anonymous nature. And, you know, I would like to go to Buena Vista on Saturday, or I would like to go out to eat this week. I want to go to the gym sometime today. So essentially you feed into the recommendation system some information like this. Now what it's going to do is it's going to go out, it's going to coordinate, it's going to look at all the information it has, and it's going to make a recommendation about when you can go or should go. And so the idea is like, hey, if you wait 10 minutes, you're going to miss this amount of traffic. So if the system has that level of awareness and you're willing to cooperate with the system, I think that we could dramatically reduce you know, traffic flows and different things like that. So essentially the players are incentivized and rewarded for cooperating with the system. You know, thus we've established a non-zero sum game where the larger benefit is reduction of traffic, pollution, and things like that. In the long run, you know, ideally, what we could see is like coordination at an unprecedented scale, right? If everyone cooperated and said, these are the things I'm looking to do right now, you can see how this recommendation engine, this big brain, would be able to kind of shift us into more healthy patterns. And so the incentive side of things, you know, it's extremely important. And this is where that Challenge 12 comes in, the business lottery. So you could see like local businesses, restaurants, donating meals, things like that into the system. As you cooperate with the system, you earn points and tokens. You can redeem those. We could create lotteries inside there to give out prizes and things to the, you know, to the different participants in the system. And ultimately, you know, it's really about getting more players into the game. The more information that the big brain has, the more people that are using the system, the better it could get. So any questions?
How would this play on top of existing traffic searches and apps that we're already currently using? Any ideas there? So if I have to go to somewhere else in addition to Waze or Google Maps, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. So I would think that we could leverage APIs from those apps, right, to pull in data and help feed the big brain initially. But ultimately, what I would really love is if this were more of a public system, a public good, and it wasn't, you know, anchored into Google and Waze, who are, you know, essentially taking all that user map and location data and, you know, selling it off to the highest bidder. So this really kind of anchors into a system that would help the users move back into move towards self-sovereign data stores and things like that. So maybe some API connections, and then hopefully we could outdo those apps.
Actually, that makes me have another question that's tied to that. So since all this information would be on the blockchain and transparent, could other people strip it off to use it as metadata for their own marketing and trying to figure out where people are?
Yep. Good question. So at this point, really, you know, it's a greenfield design. We would probably be pretty careful about what we want to put on the blockchain, you know, for those privacy and security reasons. Some of the self-sovereign data store tech that's coming out now, I think, is really compelling. So we could kind of store those metadata and records in a distributed way that's accessible via, you know, DIDs and things like that. But probably be a little wary to put that stuff on chain.
Thanks.
Yep.
Hey, John, you're mute.
I think you're muted there, buddy.
John, you're...
Okay, thanks, Zach. Good seeing you.
Likewise. See ya. Thanks.
Let's jump into the next one. We're gonna go to Arcology Builders with Paul tackling challenge number. I'm on echo. Real quick, Paul.
Paul, could you close the other tab that you have with the live stream in it? Thanks.
Yeah.
And then unmute when you're ready.
Okay, Arcology Builders revitalize vacant buildings and land into compact, affordable, and nurturing community homes, co-op businesses, farming, and schools, solar-powered and geothermalized. We address homelessness, climate change, and housing justice. We're ready for peak population 2050. Paul, you ready? Okay, you're on mute, man. Unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Unmute. There you go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it. You got 5 minutes.
All right, thank you. So my name is Paul, and I am working on Arcology Builder. So we revitalize urban spaces into sustainable, walkable, eco neighborhoods. And as an example, you can see on the right here is an urban building which we've repurposed to be a place where families can live, eat together, cook, grow food, are powered with solar panels, have a food co-op, collect rainwater, and in general, we nurture tribes of happy humans. So why work on sustainable, walkable eco neighborhoods? So they revitalize existing empty buildings. So buildings left vacant can be urban blight on the landscape. They can decrease a sense of safety and trust in a neighborhood. And when you revitalize them, you use less new construction materials because you're basically building on the infrastructure that you have. There's a climate benefit. So buildings are the biggest user of energy. And so the biggest climate activism that you could take is to reduce usage at the building level. And also permanent affordability. So there's a legal structure called community land trusts, and it lets communities, people who live in an area and are affected by housing prices, have a say in new development. And the structure was formed in the 60s, but there are now hundreds around the world where 1/3 of the board is governed by the tenants themselves, 1/3 by government organizations or social work groups, and then 1/3 by traditional investors who put capital into these projects, and they own the land underneath and usually lease it to buildings on top and sort of restrict the resale value to be permanently affordable, let's say 30% of the median income in the area. And once you have a surplus of housing in this way, once you have housing security for people, we live in a society that can afford to take care of everyone. And so why not end homelessness, which is the source of many social problems as well, especially during the pandemic. So what are arcologies? So arcologies were an idea from experimental architecture in the 70s by an Italian architect named Paolo Soleri, and he implemented his idea in this urban laboratory, the city in the Arizona desert called Arcosanti. And this has the key of many ideas which are used in many modern cities now. The cities are walkable, so all the living quarters are close enough so that if you were to walk to work or to your office, no outdoor transportation is needed. They're large common areas so that you get to socialize even with the social distance. And this is key to humans, emotional and mental well-being, because we evolved to live in tribes. And you know, in this case, there's no public transportation needed in the city, but for longer, bigger cities, you know, we could have fast light rail or buses or scooters, electric bikes. And it's also expandable and adaptable. So all the surfaces that you see here, like even the roofs of one building, you can climb on. It can be a surface for gatherings, but you can also build on them. And so the way the city would expand and has expanded in the past is to just build on top of existing buildings. And you know, I like to joke that we already live in arcologies. If you look at the skyscrapers of any city, we have these very dense buildings together. They're still pretty far apart and they aren't connected. So you have to go all the way down to the ground floor and back up to the other. So we have some work to do, but these ideas have spread. So what's our current progress? So in the past year, we've experimented with A-frames, which are these prefabbed kit homes in Detroit. So Detroit, as many of you might know, is a great American manufacturing city, but has, since the population is, a lot of it is vacated to the suburbs. And so there's a lot of empty land, there's a lot of dilapidated buildings. And it's a shame because there's a lot of creative energy as well. And citizens left behind who you know, are very open to new experimental technologies, new financial systems, new governance systems. And so Detroit is also an area after Denver and Colorado that is like very open and to blockchain technology. So we chose this design. So we had this design drawn up by A-Frame, which is originally an Estonian company. But the idea for these A-frames is that it's completely reproducible. So this 2-person home costs $40,000 to build from scratch. So this was an approach where we were trying to build small minimalist homes. 2 or 3 could fit on the same lot. And we wanted to attach a geothermal greenhouse as in the sketch so that heating and cooling could be provided by the earth as well. And lots of other cool ideas that I won't go into, like each home having its own rooftop mesh antenna and having data servers to sort of give sovereignty to people who wanted to collect their own data within their homes. But we moved beyond this idea somewhat because it still encouraged more urban sprawl. Like we couldn't compact the housing together closely enough, and it was still on the ground level. So while this is an early stage, we lifted our sights more to entire buildings. So buildings that are already dense and may have been left vacant by their owners or businesses for a long time. So this is our timeline. In 2020, we pursued the A-frame design plan. We're now moving beyond it to acquisition of industrial buildings and land and sort of working to rezone those for commercial and mixed use. And in this phase, we'd like to make a web app interface for non-technical users, just like tenants, owners, everyday citizens, to participate, to give voice to designs, architectural designs that they like or buildings that they want to participate in, you know, make their voice heard, and then also stake funds. So hopefully connecting potential homeowners directly with architects and builders in these community land trusts, in these dense, walkable eco neighborhoods directly in a self-funding model. And then in 2022, we hope to begin construction based on the input that we've received from our stakeholders. So a case study is this building here in Bushwick, Brooklyn. I lived here for 3 years. This is a 4-story industrial building. It's owned by a single owner, but it's been unoccupied since the 90s. It's really huge, 11,500 square feet. I'm a huge real estate nerd, so I'm sorry if these numbers are not as exciting to you as they are to me. But you know, this building, there's a lot of homeless people around this building in New York, and there's a lot of graffiti and broken windows, as you can see. And so it's a shame because the bones are so good, and this neighborhood could benefit a lot by community center. I usually think of these buildings as like trees of an ecosystem. You know, a tree's roots hold things in place. Sorry, was there feedback?
You got about 30 seconds.
Okay, so the idea is, you know, if we have a building, what should we do next? Well, we connect the stakeholders with the architectures, as we mentioned. And working with the state of Colorado, we would love to get an introduction to building owners that the city would like to see developed, to have support in a legal sense for community land trust formation and advisorship. You know, the 1/3 of the community land trust board is given over to city governments who would benefit and have a big stake in how their citizens are housed. So that is how we hope to work with the state of Colorado. We don't intend to solve all of blockchain ourselves. You know, I mentioned very little about blockchain in this talk, but we'd love to work with other projects that are presenting here today. For example, a rent-to-own scheme. When tenants pay rent, you know, this record is not currently transparent. Their trustworthiness or record of building doesn't really go anywhere, and it doesn't lead to them eventually owning their own homes. So if this were managed by an automated contract, such as on Ethereum, it would build, I think, trust on both sides for this new model of rent to ownership. And then also online schools. The presentation of Serto before was great. We hope to have schools for sure in our arcologies, and then voting directly through the app that we mentioned, so that stakeholders could govern and manage the consent that they give to the buildings where they live. So this is our team. I'm Paul. This is Adrian. I received a lot of help from Sean Burke, who I met at this hackathon, and then other friends in Detroit who worked on this idea with me. You can reach me at paul@arcology.builders. Thank you for the opportunity to present with you, and I'd love to hear your questions.
So we're kind of out of time, Paul. You did a great job at presenting, but we got a lightning pitch. So we'll hold off on questions for the time being, if that's okay, and we will get back to you. We'll connect you with the judges and things.
Of course. Thanks, John.
No, you got it. Thanks, Paul. All right, moving on to Halcyon X. So Halcyon X is addressing challenge 10. You ready? Okay, I'm going to give you a quick introduction. Halcyon X is a decentralized immunity passport to allow users to collect their status from home and now test kits like Abbott's Navica proctored by earned and vaccine statuses to allow re-entry into spaces by using smart lock bracelets or users' location at condos, offices, and public shared spaces. So this is a health-driven sort of public safety app, and yeah, let's jump in. You're on mute, you.
Hi, I'm Whrrl. I used to be an engineer at a startup I still cannot disclose. So right now I'm building for ETHDenver hackathon. I'm a builder, and I'm supposed to building this application as I go through. So one of the ideas for Halcyon X is to decentralize the information at this app store, like Navica or Bax that are out there in the market, in the user's, I guess, device. Some of the applications here I listed, like Navica, Loom, Bax, and the IBM Salesforce Immunity Passport. So currently on the market, as you can see, these are the applications that I was talking about. For continuous testing or vaccine, you swab your nose with one of these cards, you put it in there, and it pretty much gives you a status valid for 7 days, for example. So right now, there's no one single solution for continuous testing or for vaccines or for re-entry to the workflows like an IBM Digital Health Pass, for example. It's all distributed, and the user will have to log in to each and one of these different, for example, testing tools. Because COVID, I think the Abbott at-home test kit was only approved for Colorado and Ohio, while Loom might win other states. It's a little bit too much of an overhead for the average user. And since the vaccine rollout is taking a while to be distributed to, I guess, citizens, this is gonna last a while. So Halcyon X is a smart contract. Right now, I'm building it with NFTs. Eventually, ideally, I will have to migrate it into an ERC 725, which is the identity protocol for Ethereum. Of course, I'm familiar with the HL7 formatting to ensure HIPAA compliance. The idea is very simple, very extremely simple, actually. It's just a smart contract that the user can update, can fetch a token representing their COVID status anonymously and be able to update it or add new keys as he has more devices. So how it works is very simple. User requests an update data from the Oracle through an app or through any application that they have. The Oracle status updates the status based on that request, and they receive a response, positive or negative. So how do I plan to use this for real estate? So most of the condos nowadays, especially in Miami, use these bracelets, smart locks pretty much. And these smart locks have APIs that I can integrate with. So basically, the idea is as follows. Users will need to, I guess, the smart locks will need to require a status of a user, whether they have been vaccinated or their COVID status, or any other disease status that these test kits might allow for in order to gain access to an amenity or commercial facility or even someone else's store. I think with all the investment that has poured towards this COVID-19 solutions, the infrastructure in place is not going to go away. These apps are not going to go away. I think blockchain is a good fit to decentralize. It's a good fit, I guess, to make it easy for the user to aggregate all their statuses across all these applications, since it's unrealistic to expect these companies to merge in the near future. So that's what I'm building right now. If any feedback is welcome.
Cool. Thank you for that. Very cool. Tom, Carrie, Will, any questions?
Well, I had one question. One thought anyway. Again, I'm thinking about government uses, and when kids go from school to school, they usually have to prove that they had their vaccine. So, these vaccines, they go from private school to public school, or they change schools and they have to do it. And this would be also something they could maybe integrate with their grades. I don't know. I mean, is there a package where you could put the whole thing and help kids move from school to school?
Well, ideally, this is an entry to identity, I guess, decentralized identity. It's an angle. Eventually I can expand to add more data to it. But right now I'm just focused on statuses.
And right now, you're saying that there are passports. I understand there are passports where you can record your vaccine or the test, and you're saying there's no passport right now that integrates both of these in one place, that aggregates all that information in one place. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's multiple companies. It's distributed across. Like this Magica, it's valid only for 7 days after you swab your nose here. This is Abbott's product. There are multiple solutions in place and multiple competing. The centralized, I guess, the immunity passport wars is happening. It's what's happening right now across the entire world. Dubai has their own immunity passport. US is developing like a couple of immunity passports. IBM their own. And so there's.
So how is yours different?
Mine is just an API. So I'm gonna allow the user to gain control for whatever application I use. So that I would integrate to me. A smart lock can integrate to me, and anyone can just integrate to me, and I'll be the source of truth.
I see. So they can put in whatever they want. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Abbott will hit my smart contract, update the COVID status, and that should be it. Using the Fire for the common HL7 format, Fire.
Thanks.
Thanks, you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Up next, we have Challenge 15 with Colorado Clean Coin. And there's this troll that just keeps asking me to pitch. And he asked me 5,000 times, so I decided to let him. So his name is Russell Castanero. This guy just won't go away. So Russell is going to be talking about Colorado Clean Coin. The quick introduction is the Colorado Clean Coin and Colorado Clean Environment Enterprise leverage blockchain regulation and fee baits to allow Colorado to run on 100% renewable energy by 2040 while Colorado businesses, residents, and visitors thrive. Russell, you ready for your 5?
Ready to go.
All right, hook it up.
Okay. So thanks, John, and thanks to all the judges for giving me the opportunity to pitch here, no matter how many teeth I had to pull to do it. This proposal is to create a clean Colorado coin and state enterprise to manage this process. So we need the clean Colorado coin because we know that global warming is real. The droughts, the high temperatures, even the snow, they all show it, and it affects all Coloradans. Now, Governor Opolis and the legislature agree. We have calls for a 90% reduction of greenhouse emissions from the 2005 levels to 2050. And we have an even more ambitious goal to be on 100% renewables by 2040. The only way to do this is with bold action. We can accomplish this by leveraging fee baits, that is, regulating emissions of greenhouse gases via permitting and licensing those emissions, issuing tokens for confirmable activities that reduce, sequester, or eliminate greenhouse gases, provide a reliable rate of return on tokens issued, and enforce real penalties for unpermitted emissions. Now, as far as permitting goes, any entity that emits more than a specific amount of greenhouse gases that affect Colorado residents, resources, or land would have to purchase a license or a permit for producing those emissions. And accidental emissions would require emergency permits within 30 days of an incident. The enforcement side, entities emitting more emissions than permitted would have to pay a penalty of at least like around 150% of the standard permit cost to make sure that there was some real bite there. And then, of course, if any entity couldn't shoulder that cost, we would need to hold the senior management or the ownership of that entity personally responsible. And the best part of this is, of course, rebates that can be issued to eligible entities when there's a confirmed emission avoidance or sequestration that occurs. So now this doesn't all just sort of happen by itself. It needs a lot of legwork into the confirmation and enforcement of emissions. So therefore, there's a fully self-funded state enterprise called the Colorado Clean Environment Enterprise that will be established, or C2E2. And C2E2's regulator activities include setting minimum emission levels and waivers for activity below a certain level, establish annual rates of returns for or annual rates for permits, licenses, and penalties, enforce the limits, confirm the emissions of regulated entities, and levy penalties and fines. And then the rebates, C2E2 will issue rebates and incentives via the Clean Colorado coin by awarding tokens based on provable emissions avoidance and sequestration. So they'll be able to mint coins in annual tranches. They'll be able to set a rate of return for those, and I'll go over that in just a minute, what that means. The tokens will all be traceable back to the source activity for which they were rewarded. And they'll be tradable in secondary markets, being something like an ERC20 token. And they'll be, of course, exchangeable for non-expiring, non-refundable tax credits. And that's the way that the liquidity that they are providing. So, of course, the first thing to do is to pass the legislation necessary to create the enterprise and to establish their authority as a regulator. Once that happens, then, of course, C2E2 will have to hire staff and set up everything that you normally run. But in year 2, they could start issuing permits and licenses, and, of course, taking in penalties. They'll collect the fees associated with it. They'll also be able to award the tokens for confirmed savings and other activities. Everything that they do, all activities will be published on a publicly confirmable and visible blockchain. They'll also need to set the rate of return for the next year's tranche and modify fees if needed, because they do need to be self-funded. Of course, after year 3 and any subsequent year, those activities will stay the same, with the exception that whenever someone calls in a token and essentially uses it for to pay taxes, C2E2 will have to pay the Department of Revenue for those tax credits. So an example of how this would work in practice is, let's say, a company, their activity results in getting 5 clean Colorado coins, and assuming those coins have like a rate of return that's set like 1.3%, and that the tokens are not able to be retrieved or used until the next year, the company has a couple of options. They can hold the tokens as an investment, or wait until they have a tax basis to leverage it. They can sell the tokens to another entity, or they can cash the tokens in. So in closing, we need bold moves to provide the societal, financial, and personal and business incentives to get renewable energy to the usage we need. Coloradans will make better decisions because of the Clean Colorado coin. So thank you very much. And I'm Russell Castagnero, and I know that we can use blockchain technology to show the rest of the world what urgent changes transparent blockchain technology can enable by getting Colorado to 100% renewables while Colorado businesses, residents, and visitors thrive. Thank you.
All right, we got any questions for Russell? We got just a quick sec, and then we got our final presentation. Ready?
Okay, I have Russell, good presentation. You know that states are not allowed to mint their own coins. That is to say, they can't mint money. So if the coins are exchangeable for taxes, essentially it ends up being treated like fiat. So even if there was state law to deal with the securities regulations, that would be a challenge. Is it possible to remove the tax credit aspect of it so that you're out of the FinCEN and other federal regulatory territory?
Sure. I actually, the people I talked to had said that doing it as a tax credit would actually be easier regulatory wise, because I couldn't talk to you about it, Tom. But the idea that could be paid as a direct, as they would be like they would set the floor for those tokens, that would be very easy to set up. I mean, that's the more standard approach to it, right? So there would be no problem with doing that.
If it's tradable among itself, but not tradable and not providing some kind of actual liquidity, you are moving away from that. But if you can do that, then it becomes, much more plausible, I think.
Okay, well, that sounds like great feedback. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Russell. All right, moving on to our last pitch. Tackling Challenge 7. We have a project called Opolis, which is payroll benefits and shared services for the independent worker via Colorado LCA. It's a member-owned employment cooperative. Oh, wait, that's me. So I'm actually presenting to you all. So let's, I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so we're going to talk about challenge number 7, which is about building marketplaces for independent workers to get benefits, services, while maintaining compliance. So Opolis is a digital employment cooperative, member-owned, for payroll benefits and shared services for independent workers in Colorado. So Colorado has an influx and a trend towards independent work, seasonal laborers, state contractors to maintain flexibility, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and gig workers, and specifically creatives are growing classes of workers in the Colorado economy. And this isn't just a Colorado thing. This is a national and an international thing. In fact, by 2028, it's predicted that over half of the U.S. labor force is going to be classified as independent workers. To illustrate this, you're going to meet my friend Emily. She's a state contractor with OIT. And she works through a staffing company that kind of treats her like a second-class citizen. They don't pay her very well. The benefits aren't very good, and she has to go to the open exchange and spend almost $4,000 a year more on healthcare insurance for her family. She's also working a couple of side gigs and has to manage all of this back office to the tune of $3,000 per year, plus a couple of hanging participles in 401ks that she doesn't know where to put them. So her life is crazy trying to manage all of this, and she just doesn't feel like she has the security and safety that she needs for her family. Now, the problem is that most of the existing technology frameworks and employment frameworks aren't really built for individuals. They're built for B2B engagements. In other words, corp to corp, where you've got employees as the product. Now, while employees desire more flexibility and freedom and employers desire less risk and cost, you've got intermediaries extracting massive value from the center. And actually, none of the existing solutions really support the goals that are more forefront today. The current options are, well, you can just regularly W-2 somebody, take on all the risk yourself. You can outsource it to somebody else. Or the individual has to kind of go solo and figure it out on their own. There really aren't solutions built for the next generation of employment. So Opolis is a member-owned digital employment cooperative where compliance, benefits, shared services, and payroll are done on behalf of its members. The employment experience mirrors exactly what you would typically expect from really great W-2 employment, not staffing companies sort of like shortcutting, but the actual comprehensive benefits that are customizable by each member based on what their personal goals are. Shared services are also completely handled for them, so compliance, things like actually professionalizing independent workers so that state taxes get paid, whether it's compliance with AB5 or other state requirements, FLSA, ACA, any of the other alphabet soup acronyms that are required of employment are all taken care of. And the individuals can elect to be paid in part in crypto as long as FLSA standards are being managed. Now, this experience makes Emily very happy. She has a one-stop shop for all of her support services that she needs. She's saving thousands of dollars on ACA compliant healthcare because the cooperative has the purchasing power to go out and get great care in the marketplace. She's been able to consolidate her retirement plans, and all the compliance is done. So she doesn't have to be worried. She doesn't have to worry about whether or not somebody's going to have to classify her as an employee because she's already a W-2 of her own firm. The best part is that she's incentivized to participate. She gets to consume services and be rewarded through an LCA framework, which is a limited cooperative association, of course, where we've used a unit of account tokenized, which is under the Digital Token Act of 2019 in Colorado, to keep track of patronage as it relates to the payroll mining activities that exist in the ecosystem. So for her consumption or referrals, she's issued these tokens, which in the future, as a member, translate to her share of profits and dividends that are issued if and when through the network. And no tokens are sold, so these are not securities. These are just units of account to keep track of all of that. So in short, Colorado can benefit from having a community-owned organization that allows for the future and the known future of independent workers to be able to be sovereign but collaborative with one another to solve their joint challenges. Any questions?
This is great. Can you tell me more about I didn't see healthcare benefits listed. Is that a consideration in this model?
Healthcare benefits are done through the single EIN number through the LCA. So it's essentially a PEO strategy that's being done on behalf of individual workers that are co-employed through their own S-Corp entities. So essentially, the EIN number of the LCA procures the healthcare on a group basis. So it's not done on an individual basis that has no, purchasing power. It's done on the group basis.
Great, thank you.
All right, well, thank you for letting me kind of dip in at the end here. So Carrie, Will, we're going to go ahead and say thank you to you. We will circle back with you on feedback. Russell will be doing that as well as myself. And we will be announcing the winners of the Greenfield pitches at the closing ceremonies on Friday. Cool, thank you. Tongue, stick around. Do we have Jeff